charter was only a scroll. And I thought we unified the royal family of British sport. Within 2 years, they were off in different directions. I don't think they listened to the expectations of the young people. And there were facilities provided, and there were programs provided, but I'm a great believer that you are the solution. You provide the answers. We're just basically fellow travellers. We are youth-driven, youth-focused, youth-specific, and youth-generic. Most of my best social coaches are young people. They speak the language, they understand the culture, and they help inform. So your presence here is invaluable. It was a prerequisite that the youth ministry and those representative of youth bring their expectations. And you're quite right. And I will say this, by the way, we have something called Chatham House rules in Britain, which means you can say what you want and it won't be repeated. I'm not sure what the African equivalent is, but it's called don't gossip on your brother or sister, or you might not know what gossip will come back to you. But all I would say is this. At this moment in time, the Charter has inspired an industry, and I'm not happy that everybody's here, there and everywhere, because it is only by a collective approach that we can address what are still massive challenges in this country and in other countries. It's because we're not joined up. So the next steps of expectancy will definitely be about how those networks are strengthened, how they are sustained, and how we report back. And I think what we'll share with you with regards to the website and how you will play your part within your particular interactivity will help do that. But equally, having the ongoing follow-ups that Carl Schaefer mentioned, is that you would do this naturally. So I'll be expecting a commitment that would suggest, I'm a great believer that once a month, for the sheer size of what you're doing, should absolutely be a requirement and prerequisite, if you're serious about this and the challenge that present themselves. It should not be down to me that I'm only finishing a 5-continent presence. Someone said to me, when it all goes wrong, have you noticed when it all goes right, people are quite prepared to pat you on the back and wait for you to fall. When it all goes wrong, it's amazing who they give the ownership to. So it's back to your hands and responsibility, and yes, most definitely, it has to be a network, it has to be continuing, and it has to be sustained and communicated. But I think that's why your ministry is coming here. I've had, by the way, very few ministers have actually said, yes, I will do it, and actually deliver it some months later. And I've met ministers all over the world. I've only met 4 that I would trust with dignity and respect. But we must understand that the world is not perfect, that's why you must play your part. And good democracy is where you challenge. So your expectancies are well placed.
This is Ministry of Youth. And mine is rather a challenge, and this is the voice of the youth with disability. Because most of the time, if we attend these workshops, we definitely exclude this part of the challenge, it's also a social challenge for us. So somehow I also want to hear maybe possible programs that include these youth within the youth lives sector in terms of them being active in the sports scene as well. So it's just something I wanted to mention.
More importantly, their innovation that has seen it developed into a program and where it's now being taken forward. By the way, were young people invited to be here? I can ask because I can be unpopular, I don't care. Were they invited? I invited them.
I would be the one answering.
Okay, see, there we go. And what did I tell you about people abdicating their responsibility? But all I'm saying is, you saw some young people mentioned in the footage who went to Los Angeles, and you will remember a young girl who said, when we can do this, we do that. And she spoke some years later about the gift that she felt it was. She's now an entrepreneur. She is also a youth counsellor for refugees. And she's also a continuing martial artist, because that's how we met. But I think some years, and by the way, all of the young people who went to Los Angeles, only one of them ended up in the correctional facilities, and that was for a short period of time. But all of those young people helped deliver our programs, and young people would be social coaches. The young people have designed the interactivity in the CD-ROMs that you will see. The tools that have been designed were designed by young graffiti artists who were considered criminals and now work for us and help deliver. Everything you see that has been designed has been designed by a young person off the streets. They deliver our workshops, they go into the schools, into the communities, into the young youth correctional facilities, and they present with me to business, and they go to ministries. So yes, to your question, and I would expect a large number of social coaches to come from your world, your department, and your activity. Have I answered your question?
Not really.
Not really. What do you want me to further expand upon?
But to the disability aspect as well.
Okay. Every single person, I said to you when I finished the morning session, I asked you a specific challenge of a particular human dimension. If the person has no legs, the person has no sight, have you worked out how they cross the river?
Yeah.
How do they cross the river?
Specific challenge was in the back, so she's directing the way to go through.
I've answered your question. 100% correct. You are a social coach. You can train those once you're given those tools, which I will give to you. But you are already there. And as I said, how many of you knew it? How many of you thought about it? And how many of you said, what the hell is he talking about? We can be honest and open with one another. Because I had to think long and hard. I got so involved in the highbrow thinking and policy making. It wasn't until I came back to Africa that a young boy with a football made out of date condoms reminded me that awareness is one thing, but to him, football was an out of date number of condoms that he would kick around. And at the age of 8, was it morally right that he'd be thinking about his sexuality rather than the innocence of his youth? These are questions we have to look at, questions we have to ask ourselves. So HIV/AIDS awareness is great, but I believe a good education provides that choice and characteristic. But I fully agree. Disability, the disability movement are also a major movement in our efforts, and they have real life experiences that they bring. But that is where I got the story and the humbling of the question you're asking me. But I always take great pride in asking people that might well not be sure. But I'm told our minister is arriving, so if you can have one more question very quickly. Challenge, comment. Why? No.
Andrew, why?
You know what? For 10 years I've been trying this thing and I still haven't got it yet, but I'm still trying. That's the main thing. Okay,
Andrew, I'm the national coach for Namibia netball.
Okay.
My expectation from this workshop is that once we are done, even if it's not formal, but in between, if we could discuss throughout my experience when it comes to selecting the senior side especially, we do have 3 groups, which is a bit of struggle. Grassroots, schools and youth falls under the Namibia Schools and Sports Union. And then there we've got our under 20. Now, once they finish at school, that gap to the tertiary institution, they have got another cup tournament, which is called TISA. And then comes the senior level, where we are selecting the Namibia national team from. Now that gap, how to fill that gap in order to have a continuous range of selections from the youth school up to the senior level. If in between, if we could...
a journey that is clear,
yes,
that is benchmarked,
yes, thank you.
can identify. No, that's a fair expectancy, that can be achieved. There is nothing that is not...
You can be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have our Minister of Youth, National Service, Sports and Culture, Comrade John Mutoro.
The Youth Charter, Mr. Stanley Simata, the Chairperson of the Namibia Sports Commission, and your colleagues, the Commissioners, Dr. Vetumbwavi Vei, the Director of Sports, esteemed participants and delegates to this workshop, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to join all those esteemed speakers who have spoken before me in extending a cordial and hearty welcome to our country and to Windhoek, the capital city of Namibia, to Mr. Geoff Thompson and your colleagues who have accompanied you, as well as all those esteemed delegates who have come from outside the national borders of our country. On behalf of the government of the Republic of Namibia, through the ministry responsible for sports, you are cordially welcomed here. The delegates and participants from within Namibia are also cordially welcomed to this workshop. The Ministry of Youth, National Service, Sports and Culture does, as a matter of policy and principle, support the fundamental objective of the Youth Charter to the extent that this UK registered charity and UN accredited non-governmental organization does vigorously campaign and purposefully promote the role of sports in terms of both the intrinsic and extrinsic values of sport, the arts and cultural activities in the lives of thousands disaffected young people from our respective countries and continents and the world at large. I have no doubt that eventually, Mr. Thompson, that your organization, the Youth Charter, will be able to create and deliver the needed social and human development programs with the overall ultimate aim of providing young people with an opportunity through sports, the arts and cultural activities to develop in life, in real life, in the adult life. The Youth Charter's focused attention on tackling educational non-attainment, health inequality, anti-social behavior, and the negative effects of crime, drugs, gang-related activities, and racism by positively applying the ethics of sporting and artistic excellence is extremely encouraged and welcome, hopefully by all of us, I believe. The ultimate noble objective surely is, as we always say, to use sports to achieve in practical terms the values and virtues of discipline, fair play, teamwork, respect for rules, respect for authority, and healthy competition. These are values and virtues that one can achieve through sports. And many who are today excellent leaders and personalities in their respective countries, in one way or another, have also benefited from sports to acquire these very important values of discipline, of respect for authority, respect for the other person, because it's only in sports that you also respect even your competitor, and thereby getting away with this issue of selfishness. Always I. In sports, you learn about teamwork. In sports, you learn about the other person does matter to achieve the common objective and common good. At the end of the day, such noble values and virtues can be translated into providing social and economic benefits. And it is important. I mean, sports is not just for the sake of sports. It benefits your body, but at the end of the day, if you excel, it does also have economic benefits for the individual, but also for the country at large. Sports is a big business today. In the context of a 17 years and 15 days old Namibia, today Namibia is 17 years and 15 days old as a country, as a sovereign state. I still argue from this platform, and I'm doing so very forcefully, that sport does deserve the same recognition, the same respect, the same support, and the same encouragement as accorded to other basic social programs such as education, health services, and housing. Somebody told me and convinced me. For example, take education. And those of you who are teachers will testify to this fact. Those children who purposefully and constructively participate in sports activities at school, in the majority of cases, these are the most disciplined children, and they are also the ones who respect those values of fairness, the values of teamwork, and at the end of the day, even academically, they are the good achievers. It has been proven through research. So sport does play a role. Hence we are saying, even in the curricula, in as much that physical education is not a compulsory examination subject, it is incumbent upon us, the authorities dealing with schools, and in particular the teachers, that physical education does play a role and must be given attention if you are to develop the person in its totality, namely the body, mind, and spirit. And that is what education is all about. As I said, in the context of Namibia, and one cannot ignore the fact, 17 years old Namibia, just immediately before our independence, our society, our nation was characterized by division, suspicion, balkanization. And hence, with our independence, the policy of national reconciliation, the policy of nation building, the policy of bringing our people together, which is the best medium to bring people together in a relaxed atmosphere other than sports. And hence we are saying today that sports does have a role to play in the process of bringing our people together, to enhance unity, to enhance understanding, to enhance cooperation, and therefore to contribute positively in cementing the policy of national unity and national reconciliation. And it's not only applicable to Namibia, it's beyond Namibia. How many conflicts are we experiencing in our region, in our continent, and the world at large, where the newspapers are full of reporting about wars and conflicts and hatred and divisions in the world? So we in the sector of sport must also be innovative to promote sports, to enhance this peaceful coexistence between nations, to enhance peace and understanding in our nations. It's very, very important. So sports has got a broader agenda rather than just looking at people who are running or who are boxing. No, sports has got a broader agenda than only the action that you see. Hence, I made the statement, the same recognition that is accorded to other sectors like education and health and housing should also be accorded to sports, even if the funding is not enough. But we would like to get more funding for our sports, because that will cut even on the budget of the health ministry. If our people are healthy through sports, that budget of just going every day to the hospital will be cut. Don't you agree? Now, ladies and gentlemen, the Namibia Sports Act 2003, and I'm glad the chairperson of the commission and other commissioners are here, in section 3 thereof, gives wide-ranging and important functions and powers to the Namibia Sports Commission. Almost 20 functions, if not more than that. And powers and duties of the commissions are articulated in section 3 of the Sports Act. Now, these are huge powers and functions. And in order for the commission to successfully carry out such functions and powers, I implore the commission and all other stakeholders, like us in the ministry, Director of Sports and his colleagues there, to be innovative, to be creative, and to be proactive. What do I mean? I mean here that it is the incumbent upon the commission and the ministry responsible for sports and other stakeholders, the federations and so on, to continuously devise ways and means to broaden reliable partnerships. And I'm very sure Mr. Geoff Thompson there, through his organization, the idea for us to come together here is not only a question of sitting in this hotel and talking, but we are also broadening networks and reliable partnerships, which is very, very important in sports. We have to have partners so that we can tackle and achieve the common objectives. But these partnerships, chairperson of the commission, must also be extended to the private sector. I know we are doing it, but we need to intensify. We need to have reliable partners with the business houses and other appropriate organizations, both local and globally. Government, of course, is but one of the important partners and stakeholders. It's a solid partner, is there. But government alone is not the only partner. It's but one of the partners to promote sports development in our country. Section 17(1) of the Namibia Sports Act, Mr. Simata, clearly articulates seven sources of funding. It's important that we mention these things. Also the other leaders of sports here. If you look at section 17(1) of the Sports Act, it does list 17 sources of funding for sports. Of course, the first one is the budget of government appropriated through parliament. That one, of course, is a reliable one. Every year we are now discussing a certain percentage of the total budget of the Ministry of Youth that is channeled through Dr. Vey's directorate is channeled further to the Sports Commission. And then the Sports Commission will now look at this money, and then again subdivide it according to a certain formula that was adopted a long time ago to the various sports codes that are registered and affiliated with the Namibia Sports Commission. But the point is that money alone from the budget is not enough and will never be enough, I believe. That's why in that particular section that I'm quoting, it does indicate that there are also various other sources of funding that we need to explore. And it's where the issue of partnerships now comes in. But many a times, we as leaders of sports, at the government level, but particularly at the sports coach level and the club level, we only cry, government, 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 government. There's no funding from government. And we don't, some of the clubs of course are doing good. They've established some partnerships with some companies, and that is the way to go. And we need to intensify that particular aspect, so that the Sports Development Fund that is established under the control of the Sports Commission, of course must get money from government, must also from other sources, and then we build up that fund so that we can fund so many sports activities and develop sports in our country. That is the way to go. Almost finally, the ministry responsible for sports, through its sports directorate, has been having the construction and establishment of what is now called a Windhoek Sports Training Center, or a sports school of excellence here in Windhoek, on its programs for some time now. The idea is that we want to put up a facility here in the capital city, which we will call a training center or a schools of excellence, so that eventually, as we're moving on, we talk about talents. Those young people who are identified as potential sports stars are not only exposed to the physical training, but they are also taken to school. Sports is a science, so that they are also taught, and that is the idea of this sports facility. And I think very soon we will start with that project. I am informed, for example, and I look at the budget documents, that for this financial year, 2007-2008, our colleagues from the Sports Directorate there, they have made provision for something like 5.7 million towards the construction of that facility that I'm making reference for. All that I can do at this stage is again to call upon the business houses also to look at this facility as a national facility and sponsor and invest in this facility. From our side, we would like to see the successful completion of the Windhoek Sports Training Center by at least 2009, Dr. Bay. We have 2 years. By 2009, at least to say, okay, maybe 3/4 of this facility is finished. And there's a good reason why I'm mentioning 2009, ladies and gentlemen. Our continent, at least for the first time in the history of the FIFA World Cup, has been designated to host the FIFA World Cup in 2010, next door here in South Africa. Not only that, at the level of the continent, again in the discipline of football, the continental competition, the African Cup of Nations, is also coming down to the SADC region in 2010. South Africa will host the FIFA World Cup, and Angola, our neighbor up here in the north, will host the African Cup of Nations in 2010. And you link these two events with what I said earlier on. The sports agenda and objectives of sports are more than the physical activity. There's business in there. There's tourism in there. Many people will come. Not only those that are going to participate, not only the soccer players, others will be visitors, others will be business people. And therefore we need to prepare. I have been receiving all kinds of inquiries. What is the government doing? Of course, already we have a committee in place that is putting all our preparatory efforts in place. It's not only consisting of government officials. Of course, there are various ministries, but also the private sector and companies are members of this committee to prepare for 2010. Hence, if we also look at our facilities, that's why I'm saying 2029. If our facilities, whether the football facilities in particular, are also somehow okay, that we can lure some of the players, the countries that are coming to Angola and to South Africa, why not come and do their preparation here in our country? And by so doing, we are also boosting the tourism and the business of our nation. So those who have been doubting the importance of sports, I hope I have succeeded in convincing you that when we talk about sports, we should look broader than just the activity that you see on the field or in the boxing ring or in the swimming pool. That activity of running or swimming is but one part of what sports can achieve. So Mr. Thompson, once again, welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome. And from the side of government, I would like to wish you constructive, fruitful, purposeful, and successful deliberations. And we look forward to receiving your final report, and we shall carefully study the conclusions and the recommendations that you will make in your report. And then, of course, we can already state that we will pay special attention to the implementation of some of the recommendations that will emerge out of this workshop. Thank you.
Informative speech, and I think when we have listened to the speech of the minister, some of the issues we have addressed this morning, and some of, especially the concerns we had, is really captured in his address. And what we will do, Honorable Minister, is we'll use your speech as a guideline when we draw up our report, which will eventually be tabled to you and the rest of the other stakeholders. We have our people capturing the information here and also on the video, so we'll definitely make sure that this report is on your table as soon as possible. So I'd like once again to thank you for that, and I think we are really now inspired to continue with our workshop for the next, I think it's no more 48 hours, but around, say, 39 to 40 hours. Now with this, I would like to ask Duke Thompson to come forward and sort of lead the session, and we can ask questions, maybe also related to the minister's address, also other issues, in order for us to also have it in the right way. So Thompson, please.
To lure the international community that will be coming here. They will be coming for the All African Nations Cup. They will be coming for the FIFA World Cup. What greater opportunity for this continent to demonstrate what it is able to do and what it has the capacity to share, as I've said earlier, with the rest of the global community. Many ministers speak and are not as active in their ability to fight for you. I wish I had a minister, like the Honourable Minister, fighting for me back home. Things would become rather more easier of late, Minister. All I can say is it is very heartwarming and it is truly inspiring because I don't think you have any excuses. I don't think anyone could have an excuse for the opportunity that is presented. I think by way of this afternoon, we will have established the first step in education. You will see that the structure of the next number of hours and day and a half is geared to responding to what the Honourable Minister has set out by way of policy, the Sports Act, the articles, and the sustainability of your ideas and the realisation of them. So I am now even more excited than my previous World Championship encounters. This is a World Championship encounter that we cannot fail, because how can we fail but succeed? I think as a result of this, and we are also achieving something I was told in Europe that could not happen. We are running ahead of time. In other words, we have time to spare, because it is a most valuable commodity. I know our Honourable Minister's time is always busy. So I would thought if we could stimulate by way of concluding this morning and setting the scene, the journey to date, and looking at the Minister's vision, what he wishes for this nation, and for the wider region and beyond, are any views and comments you may have, or expectancies you may have, that conclude this morning, and by way of that sets us up for this afternoon. I'd like to think that you won't be shy now that your Minister is here.
Firstly, I would really like to thank the Honourable Minister for taking time off for us. As usual, he has always been there for us when we need him. And we would like to take the opportunity of his presence here to ask some questions. Mine, I'm not very sure whether it's a question or an appeal. I've listened to all the speakers since we came in. One area we discussed is about partnership. It is true, like the Minister said, resources are very limited, particularly which comes to the sport. There are priorities in budgeting and allocation of funding. And I'm very sure sport is not one of the top priorities. So for us to survive, we need this partnership. The chairman of the Sports Commission has been tasked to deal with the partnership in the private sector, and I assume also in the government. There are areas where, as partners, I think we can make a difference. It's the other government ministries. One of our difficulties in running sport effectively is administration. What we do is not properly captured because we do not have the means of reporting it efficiently. In the regions where we are operating, we don't have offices. People do a lot of things in those areas. Offices are another area which is really critical. Ministries like Ministry of Education would make an ideal partner. Ministries of Defense, because fitness is part of their condition of service. Ministries of Gender, there's child welfare in there. We are dealing with children. The list is long. I wonder whether is it possible at the level of the ministry, at the government level, to get this partnership somewhere in line, discussed and brought closer. I know their budgets are strictly for their activities, but as partners, we probably can get somewhere. Ministry of Works, Transport and Communication. They are the custodians of government properties. If they could give us some little space, we are willing just to share a space where there's a desk and we do our activities. I think that is one area, if we can, as government ministries, as partners, may be able to assist us, and we'll be able to record what we are doing efficiently. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
But certainly with this, present themselves. Governments are there to set policy. They establish initiatives and they then bring awareness to those initiatives. I certainly think, Madam President of Athletics, that all that you have indicated is possible within the time you will spend with us. I can share with you now that I would not have embarked on this step of the journey unless I knew that we could respond to the Honourable Minister's challenge, which I believe is realistic, I believe is well thought out and considered, is visionary. But if I said to Sipho, what you have heard, is it possible?
Yes.
We've spoken for many hours transatlantically. Sipho is in South Africa, seeing the opportunities missed, and that now people are saying we haven't enough time to deliver. But I would ask that I think you are in such a golden opportunity. I'm excited at the prospect of what you will be able to deliver, because it is by what you deliver that gives the minister the currency to sit in his arena and to compete for you, that he needs evidence. And you have said, how do you capture that? Within your toolkits now, you are able to capture that. And I think once you can do that to the satisfaction of the Namibian Sports Commission, and their policy framework is shared with the Ministry for Youth and Dr. Bay in his representations as he makes, both from a national, sub-regional and international perspective, I think you have a model that becomes something that can be invested by way of a public and private sector investment, and the benchmarks that are very much needed to argue a case when resources are so limited become real, not only the tangibles, but the intangibles. But I would say by all that you've identified, we've been able to do that in Britain, but we have still not managed to engage our young people. You have the additional advantage. You have size, you have the willingness of government, you have policy, you have articles that put you in the right direction, and you now have the ability of what I believe has always been the Youth Charter's potential, to add value, not to replace, not to compete. And I do think, I have spoken to business. Your former commissioner here in Carl Schaefer, I have been speaking to him regularly. What does business think? What does it want to do? How does it want to respond? And businesses are very straightforward institutions. They invest, they wish a return. But I would have said, if a cultural framework results from this and is presented to our Honourable Minister, I think he would feel much equipped to continue to champion and fight your corner. But I think, as I'm sure the Honourable Minister will agree, fighting a corner with limited government resources can only go so far. How do we make it more compact? And how does sport play its rightful role? As I've said, in Britain we have that. It still is not reaching the hearts and minds. You have that, and you have a minister who can articulate it, present it, and fight for you. So, Minister, if they're not too interested, maybe you'd like to come back with me to Britain, and I'll arrange a discussion with a few ministers there. But you have someone who will articulate and fight your corner. We have to give him the currency to do that.
Can I just say something?
Please, Minister.
I think the comments and contribution by Ms. Garwes are very, very, very important and valid. What is it that the ministry must do to enhance this partnership at the ministry's level? You mentioned, for example, the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Gender, and other ministries. Let me state that Namibia has got one government. It's a starting point. Now, our constitution provides that for the effective delivery of services to our different regions and villages and different localities, to our people, the constitution does empower the president of the country to create ministries, departments, and to appoint ministers and deputy ministers and so on. And there's a public service. The different ministries of government are not above the whole government. Ministries are there to deal with specific issues. But at the end of the day, all these specific issues must come together. Education provides the education to our young people, training. We provide sports services, culture services, arts, defense for the security. But at the end of the day, it's to one people. And therefore, there is no contradiction at the policy level. I don't think any minister will stand up and say, no, we've got nothing to do with sports. So they won't say that. But how do we cement these partnerships? It is important that at the implementation level, and sports is very organized. Sports is very, very organized. It's one of the sectors that is so organized. You have the commission overall here and the Directorate of Sports, but then you have the federations. You have the boxing, the football, the netball, the swimming, the hockey, many, many federations with their leaderships. They set the agenda for their specific federation or discipline. Then below you have the clubs. And the clubs also are organized. They have got their executives, their leadership and so on. Up to the level of a team. The team is also organized. There's a captain and other people, coach and so on. So what I would like us to pay more attention to is that, for example, let's say, to use now the argument of Ms. Garwes, which are valid arguments. Let's say boxing wants to stage a tournament in Okakarara. Now in Okakarara, maybe there's a hall, and that hall is maybe under the jurisdiction of the municipality there. Or maybe the hall is under the jurisdiction of the school. There's absolutely nothing that prevents the leadership of boxing to directly contact those people who are in charge of that particular facility that they would like to use. And it must be done in good time to say, okay, on this day, we'd like to have a tournament in Okakarara. But we are looking forward maybe to have this tournament in the school hall of Okakarara Secondary School. And there at the level of the school, it is not the Minister of Education who should come in now there. The first starting point must be the principal of the school, isn't it? So the leadership of boxing must liaise with the authority in charge of that school hall, which is the school, the principal, and maybe the school board, and say, this is the program that we have. We want to come with 500 young people or 100 young people to have a boxing tournament here. Would your facility be available to us? Then the other party will say, okay, fine. Yes, the facility will be available on the following conditions. Take care of it, pay a small fee, whatever it is. Then the two parties must talk to one another and then agree. The same applies whether it's a soccer field or a netball field or whatever, even a facility that your team must go and use to as accommodation. But our experience tells us, because there is always a failure at the level of, let's say, the club or the level of the federation, everything, even a small something, what is the minister going to do about it? I think we need to overgrow these things. As he said, government is there to provide a policy framework. And this government's policy framework with regard to sport is very clear. It's absolutely clear. Now, the small bits and pieces that you must now put in, how to enhance them, that is now at the different levels. So that when you do that, eventually there will be a strong, reliable partnership between the boxing leadership and the Okakarara Secondary School. Maybe, as from that incident, that particular tournament, if the tournament is successful, the other party is happy, the school is happy, the boxing is happy, maybe the leaders will say, okay, fine, now we have this now mutual trust. Because partnership is about trust. Even partnership between two people, there must be trust. I mean, otherwise you divorce or something will happen. Must be trust. So maybe then they will say, okay, because this tournament was so successful, no problem, no vandalism, no nothing. Therefore, from the side of the school, we offer you. Maybe they will say, we offer you anytime when you feel like having your boxing tournament here, this school is available. Then the partnership is established. And then the two parties will work to cement and have that partnership grow. This is what we must do. The same with the business, the private sector. And I must say, the private sector in Namibia is willing to assist sport. We have seen it. They are willing. They are willing to assist sports, to invest in sports, because there's also something in for them. Give their money, get publicity, whatever it is. But then what we must work on very hard is, in order to sustain a partnership, there must be trust, there must be accountability, there must be. Otherwise, the partnership cannot last. So it's a two-way traffic. It's a two-way traffic. The same with the schools. Same with the schools. I mean, I haven't received any report, for example, where a particular team would like to go and use school A's soccer field or a netball field, and then that principal or whoever will stand up and say, no, it is against policy. If that person stands up and says that out of ignorance, that person can be helped. But it's a question of, okay, fine, our field will be available, but look after it, and so on. And that must be at the specific level, whether it is at the club level, whether it is at the federation or sports code level. I want the leadership to establish that. The chairperson of the commission, by virtue of the act, has also certain responsibility, I mean the commission itself. But you cannot say that it is now the commission that must go and do everything for us. Even if you want to travel to Oranienburg, commission chairman, please contact the school in Oranienburg who are coming there. No, it doesn't work that way. So that's what I mean when I say we have to broaden this partnership. But partnership is based upon trust. Always remember this. It's upon trust and upon mutual acceptance. And if one party does not, then the trust will not be there, and therefore the partnership will not be there. But there is a great willingness for people to support sports. But then our credibility as leaders must also be above suspicion. Because if you establish that partnership, and you go there and say, no, it's my team, we are going to tour to this country, please give us a sponsorship, and tomorrow it is discovered that sponsorship did not benefit the team. Don't blame the sponsor now tomorrow when you say, no. So trust, mutual acceptance, accountability, very important. So that's what I would like to add to the valuable contribution from Ms. Garwes there. Yeah.
You have to do. I don't know how much more. I don't get this much from government in such a short period of time. Believe me. Any more comments, questions? Super, please.
I just want to add on what the minister has just said in terms of framework, to say he's put a challenge to different organizations to say there is an act which talks about funding. Now it is a challenge to all the organizations to make sure that they familiarize themselves with the act and make sure again that that information does not stay within the organization. It gets to the lower of the lowest in terms of the organizations, because that's where the problem starts. You would find, like for example in South Africa, there is a complaint or a concern about the BE. I don't know if you're familiar with that BE's thing. People forget something, that government set up policies. If you are not familiar with the policies, or if certain organizations that are in position to make sure that everybody knows about this, if they don't give the information to different people or to the lower community, it means a problem. People are complaining and saying BE is just for the elite, it's only this one and this one who benefits. But they don't know what the BE charter is all about. It's all about information. The most important thing is to educate people, to make sure that they do understand the policies, they do understand what is there, what the government is providing. And it's not up to the ministry to make sure that you understand that well. It is up to us, different organizations, to understand the policies that have been set up by government and make sure that that information gets disseminated to different communities, so that the communities, when they start complaining, then you can say, but we've got a structure, because what we need to do is to set up an information center where people are able to access information, because without that information, that's where the concerns, the complaints start from. But if there's an information center where an ordinary citizen can access that, that's the best tool, because with that information, which comes from the ministry, everybody can access, but it is a challenge to the organization to make sure that that information center is there and it's fair, everybody knows about it. Thank you.
This is not a challenge that we should not be able to respond to. 2010 will bring and see Africa globally connected with broadband and new means of communication that would normally not have been the case. But I still would want to remind you of the most valuable communication medium there is. It's called word of mouth. And I'm sure if word of mouth is used, then the other tools can become additional tools of communication. And as a result, government can only set policy. Then they can change policy if they know if it's working or if it's not working. But I would argue that, and I concur, in sport, sometimes we focus too narrow-mindedly on the winning, as opposed to what it takes to take part and be part of a wider society. And that's what this is about. The blinkers, widening the vision. Trust is absolutely fundamental. Accountability is something sport are not good at doing. We say we will win medals. Winning is not a science, and it is not a right. It's something that we're lucky if we achieve because of the hard work. And ultimately, mutual understanding and communicating that means you have something that can be built upon. I'm constantly aware of time. I'm still hoping that we are. It will not only help Namibia and Southern Africa, it will help those young people beyond. So, Honourable Minister, as I say, is another step of the journey we are making. I'd like to thank you most sincerely, and I will give you the final word. All politicians must have the final word. It's an important prerequisite of any engagement with ministry and government. I'm not sure what that is, but it shouldn't be my way.
Another speech. All that I can say is what I concluded with in my statement. You are here for a purpose. Even the issue of exchanging ideas is necessary. And I would like really to wish you, as I said earlier on, purposeful, constructive deliberations, always having in mind, sport is not an orphan. You have been selected here, I'm sure, on the basis of you representing some people who could not fit in this room. And therefore what you will learn out of this workshop, or what you will contribute, again, as he said, must go back. There's the issue of accountability. Must go back to your constituency, inform them what is the thinking, what are the planning, what are people saying, and how do you move forward. So I wish you well. It's not a waste of time that you are here, but you are here for a cause, to those that you are representing. So we look forward once again to the report, the final report. Thank you.
Morning session is concluded. Have a good lunch and enjoy. I think if we are mindful that there is another workshop taking place, if we could quietly just make our way up, I'm assured that I hope the buffet will be served a little earlier. We've got the refreshments.
Thank you. They're preparing something.
To their permanent secretary, I know one stays with them. you give one, it never stays with the minister. So as he has made you a commitment, he will know of the tools that you are using. He will understand the speech and the commitments he has given you. And therefore, when he receives your report, and the permanent secretary receives the report, I know it will be taken forward. So, Minister, this is by way of just a few keepsakes, but more importantly, the information that has always reflected your energies today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
For the PS, I will give to the director. Directly to the PS. Take care.
That's mine now. I keep forgetting it's on your head and your shoulders. But Dr. Bay is a protected species, believe me. He's too valuable. I fear you want to do some work, but I normally have a complaint at this time in Europe. They remind me that we're working them too hard. But I think lunch is well and truly served. So please enjoy, and we will call you back at the appropriate time. Thank you. Since we last met, young lives are being lost.
Thank you for coming.
It is, since we last met, young lives have been lost. It has been very hard of late. But if only, I say this quite openly and honestly, our minister does not share the passion, the energy, the commitment. Mr. Richard Kane, he's been around for some time, but for that reason.
The church must prepare, we as the church, we must prepare ourselves to move with God and see the wonders of God and see the miracles of God. Our theme for this year